Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn. I run the services and provide the resources at medcommsnetworking.com and the associated website. So services, information, resources, and so on, activities for people who work in and around the global MedComms community, by which I'm talking about people who work in and around medical communications, medical education, medical publishing, and associated businesses. And importantly, for people who are interested in learning more about MedComms, maybe you want a career in MedComms, or you think you might want to be a medical writer and so on, in which case I'd encourage you to go and have a look at firstmedcommsjob.com specifically, where there's lots of information about the business and guidance in terms of coming in and starting your career within the business. I'd also just point out NetworkPharma TV is worth having a look at. All these sorts of webinars that like we're doing today are recorded along with more video content at NetworkPharma TV. You'll find 400 plus videos now relevant to MedCom, so quite a good resource there, which is developing quite nicely. So lots to go and have a look at if you've not seen it. Today, absolutely delighted to have the guys from Oxford PharmaGenesis, Cathy and Carmen, to talk about mentoring. I won't steal your thunder. We're talking about the whole process of mentoring, being a mentor, being a mentee at Oxford PharmaGenesis, and how that's contributed to your training environment. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Cathy to introduce.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, firstly, for having us. We're delighted to be here, and welcome to everybody that's joined. Thank you for joining us as well. So we really are delighted to be here, as I say, to discuss how we think mentoring is making real difference to our company, actually, and helping us further embed our learning culture. So what we're going to be talking about today, what we're going to be covering, is why we decided to set up a mentoring program, what some of the key reasons our colleagues applied for a mentor, or actually to become a mentor themselves, what areas they'll be focusing on, maybe some of the things that we think our mentors will be doing, what they are doing, what we think makes a great mentor and a great mentee. And then we're going to wrap it all up with just some top tips for anyone thinking of becoming a mentor or a mentee, pulling out some of those skills and talking a little bit about those. So I'm going to hand over to Carmen, first of all, to talk about why we decided to set up a mentoring program in the first place. Carmen, over to you.
Thank you, Cathy. So really the key reason we decided to set up the program is because we've got lots of great experience and knowledge in the company. And people do, of course, share that already. We encourage them to do that on training sessions. But the mentoring program really allows us to formalize that approach and to give people the training and support that they need to best share that knowledge. With a team of mentors behind us, we can reach a wider audience than we otherwise could, and we can provide people with that dedicated, personalized learning over a longer period of time with a specific focus or a specific developmental goal. It's also a really great way to help people to connect, especially in this new hybrid working world. It can be harder, it can take more effort to network and to build connections. So that's also really, really helping at the minute. So it's great timing to launch the program, we feel.
Excellent. Okay, thanks. We're gonna have a little bit of a conversation to sort of guide ourselves through setting this up a little bit, Carmen. So I hear what you're saying, but what are the key reasons from the sort of the people within the company would either apply to be a mentor or a mentee?
So the most common reason I would say from mentors and mentees is definitely that piece around connecting. People wanted to meet new colleagues, broaden their networks. I think it was particularly common with new starters, so people who are new to our company who just wanted to meet people outside of their teams. We do that already through various channels, so it's just adding another way of meeting other people. We also had, so the common one specifically for mentees is that they wanted advice from someone with experience. And already I'm hearing from a lot of the mentees that it's been great just to sit down and have an informal, unstructured conversation with someone who has that experience. And also our mentors. So the key reason that came out with the mentors, which I think is particularly nice, is that they wanted to give something back. A lot of them recognized the value of having someone early in their career or when they were trying to learn a new skill or to develop, and they've seen this as an opportunity to give something back and to help somebody else now, which is, I think, my favorite one.
Okay, and sorry, I actually didn't ask my question quite the way that I'd agreed to ask it. So sorry about that. So, but let me just come backstage, and this is now me just ad-libbing, okay? But from a mentee point of view, so a mentee, is everybody a mentee? I'm sorry, am I just missing the point there? Is everyone a mentee? And then the question is, who's a mentor? So the question is, why would somebody step forward and go, I'm a mentor? Does everybody have that mentee position? By definition, am I asking a stupid question?
I understand. Okay, so we have mentors and mentees in the company. You can volunteer or apply to be either or. Some people are both,
okay.
which I love.
Okay.
Some people are mentoring and they have a mentor.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you can apply to be a mentee, as
Yes.
opposed to this is just part of your training scheme. You are a mentee, and this
Yeah.
is it. Okay. I just find that interesting. So, okay, so I'm going to go off tangent here, but just out of interest, why do you think people wouldn't apply to be a mentee?
That's a great question. I think, I mean, I think it could be that there isn't something specifically that they're looking at the minute. You know, sometimes we just want to do our job really, really well, and we're focusing on that, and we feel like we've nailed it, and we're happy where we are. Sometimes we're looking to develop a specific skill, or sometimes we're looking to progress in our career. So I suppose it will feel relevant to different people at different times, right?
Yeah,
and we launch it twice a year, so people can kind of jump on as and when they feel it's right for them.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we'll come back to that point in a minute. Sorry, sorry, Cathy, you were trying to say something there. Sorry.
No, I was just going to add to that, Peter, really, in terms of, we also have obviously a whole wide range of learning activities that people can get involved in throughout the year, every week. So people are, you know, developing their skills in loads of different ways. So this is just another layer to help people embed that as well. And that's what I love as much about this program, that, you know, people can then discuss with their mentor some of the things they go and learn in a training course that we provide, you know, and then they can take that back and they can apply that to their job, and they can discuss it with their mentor and take it a layer deeper, which is fantastic. So I guess at some point we'll have pretty much everybody go through this program at some point, but if they want to, we don't want to force people to do that. You know, we want it to be someone that really feels that they could benefit from something like this. So we've opened it that way.
Okay, that's making sense. But again, just clarify a couple of points there. And Carmen, I think you said this is launched twice a year or something. So there's quite a structure to this. So I mean, just help me understand that a little bit. Twice a year, you go, right, we're starting the mentorship program. Who wants to be a mentee? Who wants to be a mentor? But it's not running for, I don't know, 6 months. It's a longer process than that, isn't it?
Yeah, so we have a loose structure because we feel we should give some guidance, of course, but we are happy for people to take it as it works for them. So we say, when you're signing up, you're doing 6 months to start with, because we don't want people to be put off with, you know, I can't manage a year. It might, you know, because it's a time constraint. So we say initially 6 months, but if you want to carry on, you know, if you really like the connection you've built, keep going. You can still get support from us. So we ask people to agree to an initial 6 months, and then it's up to them to decide.
Yeah, and the structure, Peter, allows for us to be able to give a little bit of training to the mentors as well, and a little bit of training to the mentees, just to make sure they're getting the best out of the program, rather than having a very flexible, unstructured approach where people just make those connections, which is also great. Don't get me wrong, we love that, but we want to be able to provide a little bit more support to both parties in that relationship. So that's why we did it that way.
And again, I'm now just asking my own questions here, but this is alongside of a line management type function, presumably, because you know, traditionally you would come into a business and you'd be talking about some of this stuff with your line manager, and that would just be an ongoing process. But you're bringing this in as a complementary activity, presumably to support, but also to allow a sort of a second way of talking to somebody instead of just through the line manager sort of thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I think you did cover some of this, but let's get back to a couple of questions that we sort of like prepared. So in terms of what areas of the mentees interested in, just run through that again? Just what are the mentees interested in, do you find in practice?
So it has been really helpful to sort of tap into what people are interested in. It's another way of gathering, you know, the learning needs within the company. And it has been quite interesting actually to see that. So some of the key areas have been presence and impact. So enhancing presence and impact. I think that's come up particularly now that we're in a virtual setting. It can be harder, it can be more challenging. You know, if you're on a call with lots of people and you don't have much to say, you can feel yourself, you know, in the background a little bit. So people are interested in boosting their presence and their impact, which has been great for us to know. We're working on something in the background to meet that need. I mentioned already new starters, so people that are new to our company specifically have seen it as a way of fast tracking that initial, you know, that new starter phase where they're trying to meet people and trying to get to grips with how we do things here. So that's been a really popular one. And also we've had some people that are interested in career progression specifically, and they want to meet someone who's done the next step, and so they can, you know, figure out what they need to do to get there too.
Okay. And again, we've touched on this a little bit, but let's just sort of summarize, you know, what are the key things that the mentors are doing in practice?
Yes, so we covered this actually on the mentor welcome session. Of course, the most obvious one is sharing their experience, their knowledge, giving feedback and encouragement. And that's certainly happening at the minute. You know, like I said, some people have said it's just been great to chat with someone who's had experience. But I've had a couple of mentors say to me, what do we do when we run out of steam, when we've had lots of conversations, what's next? And there are a couple of things that I think the mentor can do that will really add value. So one of those things is, Cathy mentioned it, helping the mentee to embed the learning. So if they're going on a training course, asking them, okay, what do you hope to get out of the course? What are you looking for? And afterwards, what did you learn in that session? How do you want to practice that in the real world? And then once they've practiced it, how did it go? What would you do differently next time? There's loads of conversation you can have before and after that to really help them bring the learning into the real world. And also signposting. So mentors will of course be sharing their own experience, but they can signpost the mentee to other people in the company, in the industry, you know, follow that person on Twitter, connect with this person, they've got lots of experience, but also signposting resources, you know, check out this great website or watch this video I found that might be interesting. So there's a whole world of resources out there that they can be signposting to as well.
Okay. So okay, this is a slightly, I don't know, flippant sort of a question in some ways, I suppose. What makes a great mentee?
Yes, so I have some slides on this actually. So I'm just going to share my screen because we did talk about this in our mentor and mentee welcome session. So we've pulled a couple of things that we think are useful. So what makes a great mentee? Firstly, owning their own development, you know, driving the conversation forward, taking charge, and really clearly communicating to the mentor what they need, what they want from the relationship. The mentors have got lots of great knowledge to share. They just need to know what the mentee needs. So really leading on that and owning it. Asking lots of questions, of course, like I said, that there's lots of knowledge that can be shared there. So using that and asking lots of questions, and it sounds like that's happening already, which is fantastic. And listening and trying to really listen, to learn and to understand. Cathy will talk a little bit in a moment about questioning and listening. And also being open to new ideas, advice and feedback. So when you connect with the mentor, they have new perspectives, they have new ideas that they can share. So being open to that, trying new things, taking feedback and seeing the value of the feedback. And of course, Cathy will be talking about feedback as well in a moment.
Okay, so flip the question, what makes a great mentor?
So I have a slide for this as well. What makes a great mentor? So the absolute foundation is knowledge, having the knowledge. And of course, we do have steps in the application process to make sure that all of our mentors have knowledge in the area that they're mentoring on. But on top of that, we also think that the skill set and the attitude can be really impactful. So we'll talk about attitude first. So having a growth mindset, understanding that we're not fixed, we can always get better, we can always learn and improve, and instilling that mindset into the mentee as well. If they're struggling with something, encouraging a growth mindset in them, they can get better, they just need to keep practicing. Being open and honest. So, we've made this very clear with the mentors. There's no expectation that they're the perfect finished article. If they have a growth mindset, they'll know that that's not possible anyway. It's just about learning from your mistakes. We can all make mistakes. We just need to learn from them, and helping the mentee learn as well by sharing those experiences and what they learn from them. And finally, being a great role model. So role modeling the growth mindset, role modeling being open and honest and learning from mistakes, but of course, any other, great assets that we need in the industry or just in the professional world. It's a great way to learn through role modeling and observing other people. So role modeling all of that great stuff. And then, of course, there's the skill set. So we've picked out questioning, listening, and feedback as 3 really important skills for mentoring. We have lots of training that covers all 3 of these, and we did pull out some snippets in the mentee and the mentor welcome session. And Cathy is going to give you some of those tips and tricks now. Oh,
you're on mute.
I'm on mute. I was listening intently there. Thank you very much, Carmen. Yeah, so if it's okay, Peter, I'll jump in with some of those little top tips. We're actually going to have a look at listening first. One of the most underrated skills I think there is out there. So do you know what? I think when I first started out in my career, I thought I was a really good listener. And it wasn't until I really started exploring this area that I realized that there are different levels of listening for us to be aware of. So we've got a little slide that Carmen's just going to bring up now on that, and I'll walk them through with you. But it's the levels of listening. This model is by someone called Otto Scharmer. There are loads of models out there. There are levels of listening where they talk about 5 levels of listening as well. So I encourage you to find the one that you think would fit best with you. But this is a very simple model. So first of all, we've got downloading. So the first level of listeners is basically, well, we're just downloading. We might be doing that when we're just watching TV. Some of you might be doing it right now when you're listening to this presentation. It's just letting it come down. We're not really exploring it. It's just something that we're just hearing in the background. We may be reconfirming some of our opinions, or we may actually be placing some judgment at this point. We may be thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure that I agree with that, or anything like that. That's downloading. Low level of listening, but still, useful, obviously. The second level of listening is factual listening, where essentially what we're doing here is we're focusing on the facts that we don't know. So we're really looking out for those facts. What's really important to us here? We might notice some differences. This is really important with a lot of our roles to understand those facts. Make sure you've got the detail. It's really important. But there is a shift when we move from level 2 of factual listening to empathic listening at level 3. It's a different type of listening, and it feels different to the person being listened to. So what happens with this shift is that it's essentially where we almost come round to the side of the person that's speaking when we're listening to them, and we're trying to see what they're saying through their eyes. Carmen and I talk a lot about the fact that we've all got different windows on the world. So, we're all seeing things and experience things differently. The same conversation, the same situation, the same object, we're looking at it differently because our perception of anything in life is made up of our own experiences, our values, our beliefs. So we're seeing everything or hearing everything through our own filter. So as a listener, you, unless you move into the empathic stage and come and try and see it through the other person's eyes, you'll be just seeing your perception of the situation and your perception of what they're saying. And when I actually first moved into an HR role, the biggest thing for me was I couldn't understand sometimes where somebody would come and have a conversation with me and they'd walk away going, thank you so much. I feel so much better now that I've spoken to you about this. And I was thinking, I haven't done anything. You know, I didn't fix it for them. I didn't, you know, give them my opinion necessarily, but I listened and I was making that emotional connection. And what I realized when I learned their different levels of listening was it was the empathic connection that did it for them. They felt heard. It's really important. Then we've got the generative listening space. Essentially, this doesn't happen quite as often, but it's a moment where both parties, the listener and the person speaking, leave their me orientations behind. It's less about us in that moment, it's more about the thing or whatever it is we're trying to fix or the project. And it's not so much about what we need, it's about what that thing needs. And we move into a really generative space there. It's a very creative space. I know Carmen and I and the rest of the L&D team definitely have lots of these conversations when we start talking about the world of learning. We get very generative, but it's because we've left our me orientation and we're looking to see what can we do for our colleagues to make things even better. So that's our driver to move us into that space. So there's going to be reasons when we need to be in different levels. So it's really understanding when is the right time to move from one level to another. What's needed in this conversation? Is it factual? Or do I need to move into the empathic state? Or do I need to move into generative? So those are the levels of listening. Love to hear if anybody's got any other ideas on that or questions. But we're going to have a little look at some of the things that can get in the way of us listening really well. So some of the barriers, and these are just some of them. We'll all have our own. First one's judging. And sometimes when we're listening to somebody, we start this little inner monologue in our head where it's basically saying, oh, I don't agree with that. I think something completely different. And all of a sudden we've stopped really listening. We've stopped being present because we've got the inner monologue in our head, taking us off on a tangent. So that's, you know, a struggle and something to be aware of. Then we've got matching, which for a mentor and a mentee is probably going to be really key. So there'll be experience. You'll be thinking, oh, I've done that. I can share my experience with you on that. So that can get in the way of us listening really well sometimes. So the point is, you still want to share that experience as a mentor, but make sure you listen first. Listening first before, you know, sharing our experiences. And then we've got making assumptions. Excuse me. Making assumptions. Oh, I know where this is going. I've heard this all before, that type of thing. That can get in the way. Solving, big one, particularly if you're in a line management role or, excuse me, or a mentor role. You want to fix it for the individual. So you're trying to solve the problem. And again, that can get in the way of listening. And then we've got all our distractions. Excuse me, my voice is going a little bit. I have a little chest infection at the moment, so bear with me. Distractions in our virtual world, that's really getting in the way at the moment. All these Teams messages coming through, people in our environment trying to chat to us, coming up to our desk or things at home. So that can get in the way of us listening really well. So one thing just to be aware of is if you identify this as a conversation that matters, it's a really important conversation. It's something that requires you to listen really well. Try to minimize all those distractions if you can. And I've mentioned the first one to begin with. The listener is giving full attention, their full attention. That's really important. And as I say, when you notice that this is a conversation that matters, super important, that one. that the listener chooses that right level of listening. What space do you need to be in? And the listener tries to see it from the other side of the world. So really, I talk about coming round to the side of the person, asking good questions, and we are going to talk about questioning in a minute, but asking good questions can help you understand their perception, what's going on for them. You know, it might even be, that's really interesting, I see it a completely different way. You know, tell me what you're saying so I can see it through your eyes, you know. Good listening has the listener noticing not just what they're hearing, so not just the words, but also what they're seeing and what they're sensing. You're truly listening to someone and you're really in the moment. You can see some little micro expressions potentially. You can maybe sense or hear a tone of voice, a shift in the tone of voice. You can feel that there's maybe something more to what they're telling you. And then good questions can help you get a little bit beneath the surface. A good listener stays open-minded. I talk a lot about remaining curious, and that's really important. It stops us judging, that little barrier that we talked about. Sometimes it stops us judging if we stay open-minded in the situation. And the listener checks their understanding. So they're summarizing, they're reflecting back. This is what I've heard. Am I on the right track? Because again, perception comes into play. Sometimes, you know, we might have perceived we've heard something in a particular way and we might not be quite right. So checking in to make sure we understand. It also gives the person speaking a sense that you're really listening to them if you summarize and you get it, you know, or even if you get it wrong, that's okay. They have an opportunity to set you right. So that's a little bit about what good listening looks like. Do we have any questions in the chat or anything, Peter, on that? That's we've got
no, I'll keep going. Keep going. Okay.
Keep going.
We'll come back to the questions at the end.
Perfect. All right. Fantastic. Well, then we'll segue on to questioning, because we've talked about it already, and it sits hand in hand with listening. Why do we encourage our mentors and mentees to ask lots of really good questions? Well, it helps both parties understand those different perspectives. Good questions help with that. It helps us understand what's required of us. We're going to have a little look at a model in a little while, which is the SCARF model by David Rock from the Neuro Leadership Institute. And one of the domains on that model is certainty. And if we're not certain, if we have uncertainty, then that can trigger a threat response in the brain. So questioning or asking questions helps us understand what's required of us, and that satisfies certainty for both parties. It's really important, particularly in the mentor-mentee relationship. And it helps us engage as well. So, you know, once we start asking questions, they're coming from, you know, our interest. And if we ask a question and then we get a response, which is something that we want an answer to, then it engages us a little bit. So we're really encouraging both parties to ask lots of questions, with a little caveat, of course, that asking loads of questions, particularly in quick succession, can sometimes feel a little bit like an interrogation, or maybe a little bit mistrustful or something like that. So it's really important when we're asking questions to be mindful of your tone of voice, your body language, and your energy. Again, I come back to asking questions from a place of curiosity. If you come from a place of curiosity, your tone of voice and your body language will come from a place of curiosity rather than an interrogation. So just being mindful of that whilst we go through that process is really important. So having a look at some of the types of questions maybe that people could be considering. And before we look at these clarifying, probing, summarizing, and elevating ones, oh, that's fine to have that up, Carmen. But we're going to have a look at we'll talk about open and closed questions, because that's kind of the umbrella, if you like. I'm sure loads of people will already be aware of these, but open questions are questions that encourage someone to talk a little bit more about what they're feeling. They can't generally be answered with a yes or a no. They normally start with W, so the what, why, where, when, and who questions, and then also there's how as well, so underpinning all of those. So those are the open questions, the what, why, where, when, who, and how questions. They will get people talking. The closed questions are also important, but they can generally be answered with a yes or a no. So very simple questions that require a yes or no answer. And then we can go a little bit of a layer deeper with some of these. So the clarifying questions, we've talked about a little bit in terms of checking in, helping you understand. So a question like, let me check my understanding. Were you saying X, Y, and Z? You know, just helps you, the speaker feel heard, but also it just makes sure you've got certainty. You're not going down a different path. Probing questions go a layer deeper. So it might be that they've mentioned something before that you want to go back to. So for example, you mentioned X earlier. Tell me more about that. Going a layer deeper. And then we've got elevating questions. So taking it a level up. So they might, particularly with a mentee, you might be thinking about, what else could you try? You know, if time was no object, what could you try? You know, those sorts of questions to make somebody think a little bit differently than they may be currently thinking. And then summarizing questions, again, just wrapping it all up, making it a little bit more concise. So just to summarize what I've heard, you said X. Very simple questions. We've got loads of these questions that, you know, we touch on in our coaching training. So if anybody's interested in any other questions, do just reach out. We can provide some of those. So those are just some questions to consider. And then I'm just going to touch on, this is actually a coaching model. It's by Graham Alexander, Alan Fine, and Sir John Whitmore. It's called the GROW model. Some people will have heard of this already. It is a coaching model, and coaching is different to mentoring, but why it could be useful when you're having a mentoring conversation is because there may be times where somebody gets a little bit stuck. And Carmen, I know that you've used this with the mentee of yours, haven't you?
Yes, I used this quite recently, actually. So I have a mentee and we've been working on lots of small steps. And after a while, she was happy with the small things she had done. And she said, it was really vague, actually. She said, I want to get prepared for my next step in my career. I want to get prepared. I don't know what that next step is going to be. And how do you prepare for something if you don't know what it's going to be? So we focused on the options, which is of course the O, and actually we've got loads now to work on. We've got a list, we keep going back to the list, you know, what else, what next? So that options piece really helped us to structure and bring ideas to our mentoring conversations.
Brilliant, brilliant. If you could just bring up that whole model, then Carmen, I will walk through it so people can see the options as well. Thank you. So yeah, this GROW model essentially starts off where the mentee would think about, where do they want to get to? What is their goal? You know, what would they like to achieve? And when maybe do they want to achieve that? So we're looking at the future position. And then they're having to think about, where are they now, actually, in comparison to where they want to be, and how are they going to get there? So what challenges have they faced maybe so far in trying to get there? What's maybe holding them back? So thinking through all those different things. So where are they now in comparison to where they want to be? And then this is the options piece that Carmen was talking about. What can they do to get them from where they are now to where they want to be? What are all the things? And those questions those probing questions that we talked about, those elevating questions, be really helpful here. So what can they do to move towards their goal? What else can they do? What else can they do? What else can they do? So that one question really helps draw those different things out and gets people thinking a little bit wider. Because initially we maybe fall into a trap sometimes of thinking about the option that's the easiest, or the option that comes to mind first. But when you keep asking that question, well, what else? It starts to open up some other avenues. So that's really helpful. And then the W is just planning the way forward, really, and just understanding how committed they are. So what are they going to do first? What's the easiest thing for them to do, actually, you know, out of all those options they've come up with, and when are they going to do that, and trying to make that smart, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So that's a little bit about the GROW model. So we're going to move into giving feedback now, and a quick question to you, Peter, actually, before we go into this. What goes through your mind when somebody says to you, Peter, can I give you some feedback? What initially goes through your mind?
I get very nervous.
Yes, a lot of people do. And you know, we get nervous because it's our perception of feedback. You know, we kind of go, ooh, you know, is this going to be good or is it going to be bad? And I think that language as well, can I give you some feedback, can almost be a little bit alarming. But actually what we're trying to encourage is a feedback culture where people give feedback all the time. You would really love to see that. And, you know, that's a whole work in progress, but, you know, everywhere, I think. But we want people to get good at receiving feedback, because if we have a perception of feedback that it's likely to be criticism, or we've had a bad experience of it in the past, then our brain will go into threat mode as soon as somebody says that. So, you know, exactly as you were just describing there. We can go into threat mode because we're kind of thinking, is somebody going to tell us we're not as good as we thought we were? You know, we want to encourage people to try and look for an opportunity in that feedback, if it's all possible. Even if you don't like the feedback or think it's true, what can you take from it that might help you learn and grow? So that's what we're trying to work on with our mentees as well. And then we think about giving feedback. We want to really help our mentors in this space as well. So the first step as a feedback giver is to manage your own state. So sometimes we go into feedback conversations when we're triggered. You know, we might be unsure of something, or we might be, annoyed about something, and therefore we're not in the best state to go and give feedback. We've got to manage ourselves first of all. So just taking a moment to pause and maybe visualizing the conversation, visualizing that going well, and you know what you're going to say, plan for it. Remembering your intent for the conversation, remembering positive intent. So in theory, why are you giving this feedback? You're giving it so that the individual can learn, grow, develop. So if you remember your positive intention, it puts you on a better path and thinking about your objective and just planning. So step one. Step two, choosing the right environment. What's the right time to give this feedback? Are you under pressure at the moment? Do you have time to give to this individual to make it a good conversation? Do they have time, or actually are they crazy busy right now too? You know, it might not be the best time. But we talk about feedback needing to be timely, so you don't want to wait too long. You don't have to do it immediately unless it's something that is, you know, compliance related, or it's critical, or somebody's in danger, you know, then of course you need to do it immediately. But choose your time, choose your place, and think about the support that you can give as well. And then think about the receiver. So what do you know about them that can help you understand how they best receive feedback? Because we all receive feedback in a little bit of a different way. So how might you best approach it with that individual? And I'm talking here about positive feedback and developmental feedback, actually, because some people don't even like receiving positive feedback in a group setting. It's like their worst fear. So just think about that, because some people love it. So it's how you can identify what's best for the individual. Think through what their perception might be. And when we look at the SCARF model in a second, that might help you avoid some of those trigger points. So that's a little bit of how to give feedback. I am going to talk through very quickly an AID model of feedback. But first, we'll take a look at this SCARF model by David Rock from the Neuro Leadership Institute. This is a fabulous model. I love it. I talk about it all the time. We have it threaded through loads of the sessions that we run, including stress management, change management, feedback, of course, all sorts of different things. So change management as well, of course. So what it says is, well, David Rock, firstly, he spent a lot of time with neuroscientists to understand what are the social domains that can create either a threat response or a reward response in the brain. And they came up with the SCARF model because these are the social domains that can trigger the brain. The first one is status. So we've talked about this a little bit already. How good am I? How good am I in comparison to what I thought I was, or how I thought I was? Or how good am I in comparison to others? So, you know, we may get triggered if we feel that our status is under threat. A way of avoiding triggering is to acknowledge the individual's contribution, acknowledge their skill set, acknowledge their expertise, make them know that they are valued, but there are still things that we can work on. You know, that's the growth mindset piece. Then we've got certainty. So how certain are we in any given situation? How able are we to predict the outcome? This is a big one for everybody, I think, at the moment, certainty in terms of what's happening in the world as well. So one way to support people with certainty is to be as clear, concise as possible and confirm next steps, and also encourage those questions that we've just been talking about as well. So encourage people to explore. If they feel uncertain, encourage them to explore, to try and satisfy that for themselves. Then we've got autonomy. So do I have a choice in any given moment, or is it being done to me? Sometimes if it's done to us, we can receive a little threat response in the brain on that. So allowing some input and choice where possible, and certainly in a mentoring relationship, this should definitely be there. Relatedness is number 4. So this is all about our relationships and how we feel included and supported. If someone feels left out, if someone feels that they're not involved in something, then that can trigger them on relatedness. So we really want to pay attention to that. And then finally, fairness. Do they think it's fair? Or do they think it's fair to them, or do they think it's fair to others? Actually, you can have, you know, a trigger on behalf of somebody else if you see something you think is unfair. So this is really important when we're talking about feedback. If we as feedback receivers can walk through this, if we feel triggered and kind of go, what might I be triggered on? Is it certainty? Okay, I know I need to ask questions. Is it relatedness? Well, how can I, you know, build that trust a little bit? And if we're a feedback giver, then walking through this before we give feedback, how can I avoid challenging somebody's status? How can I ensure I'm giving them enough certainty and being clear and concise? Can I give a little bit of choice in there? How can I let them know that they're supported and they've got my, my support in this situation? And how can I show them that it's fair? You'll have a much better conversation, much more fruitful conversation if you can avoid triggering those. But we will trigger them still at times, and that's okay. It's just about, allowing space for that. So that's SCARF model. And then very finally, the AID model of feedback. So super simple. There are loads of feedback models out there. Find the one that works for you. This is just really for demonstration purposes to show that there is some structure to giving feedback that can be helpful, both positive and developmental, actually. Talking through the action, what's happened, what's the situation, what was the impact of that action? And this is often the bit that is forgotten. Sometimes when we're giving feedback, we go straight from the action to the desired outcome. So this is what's happened. This is what I want you to do differently. And we forget the impact, but that's the bit that has the most impact, I suppose. So what's the action? What was the impact? What's the wider impact on that? What was the impact on them? What was the impact on you? And together, how can we work out the desired outcome and what we want to do going forward? And as I say, this is important with positive feedback as well, because just saying to somebody, you're doing a great job, that I did that with a member of the team literally yesterday, when I was saying to him, you handled that beautifully. And I could have just stopped there, but that was pointless. So I needed to try and find out what exactly did I think they did really well in that situation, so as they know exactly what they did really well and what to keep doing. So I had to dig deep to try and find that. Hopefully it made a bit more of an impact that way. So there's a little bit about feedback, only snippets, and apologies for the coughing halfway through that, but if anybody's got any questions, delighted to hear from you.
Okay, and thank you, Cathy. And yes, you did brilliantly there, keeping on going like that through the cough and so on. Thank you very much. Just for a couple of minutes, let's just wrap up with a couple of the questions that have come in. And let's go back to some practical stuff in terms of Oxford PharmaGenesis. Somebody said very early on, and I didn't hear you talk about this. In terms of mentor-mentee relationships, do they cross borders? You're a global organization. Can you be, I don't know, in the US and the UK? And how does that sort of operate? What are the limitations there? What are the good sides, but maybe also the problems with that sort of thing? So sorry, I'm starting to put words in your mouth, but in principle, yes. In practice, how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. We have got connections. So we have our offices in the UK, the US and Australia are all involved in the program, and they're all, connected globally, which is lovely to see. We check beforehand if people are happy to connect with other countries, because we know there's a time difference and not everyone can work the different hours. So we do give people the option to opt out. I think that's quite important. But yes, lots of people are connected globally, and even just across offices, because we have a few offices in the UK, and we don't get to visit them as much now that we're working virtually or hybrid. So even just that is actually quite nice at the minute.
And just pursue that one a little bit further. I mean, and I just don't know whether you would find a problem with this. And culturally, I mean, if someone's in the US and someone's in the UK and someone's in Australia, I mean, there are cultural differences, whatever the values of the organization and so on. So does that work in favor of or against the mentor-mentee type relationship? Or is that just not a problem? I don't know.
I guess it depends. Cathy, jump in if you have anything to add. We've had situations where somebody wants to look at the next step in their career, and that next step might differ from country to country just because the way the industry works. So we've matched in the same country there, but other times, people have just wanted to work on, boosting their presence online or giving feedback or something like that, in which case actually, that different perspective, I think, is a good thing to have.
Okay, Cathy, have you got a comment on that sort of point?
I agree with what Carmen said there, Peter. Actually, I think actually, so some of our training sessions, the beauty of it is bringing those people together from different countries and creating those networks and enabling people to explore different ways of working as well and learning from each other. And I love that. I think it's great. We certainly haven't come up with any barriers just yet. So it's only good stuff so far.
Okay. Again, I'm going to keep probing this a little bit more, though. I think somebody's asked a question in here, but just again, practically speaking, I just want to get a sense of this. If you match up a mentor and a mentee and they don't quite get on, there's got to be some sort of allowance for the fact that can happen in practice. So no problem. Let's shift around a little bit. I mean, again, is that a fair comment?
Yeah, it hasn't happened yet, luckily, but we do, we have some guidance actually on, potential things that might happen if this comes up or if that comes up. So we do have some guidance on, what to do. That the first port of call might be just actually stepping back and making sure that you're you've got the same expectations from the program and making sure that's aligned. Eventually, of course, we can rematch people if we need to, but luckily we haven't come to that so far.
We are planned for it. Yeah.
Okay, I just find it interesting with conversations like this to think in terms of actually what's happening in reality, sort of thing, because there must be those sorts of issues. But also, and again, it's come out. In fact, a couple of people have asked the same sort of basic question in terms of the, I guess, potential conflict, basically, or at least encouraging understanding of, if you've got a line management system and you've got a mentoring system, how much do you have to manage that, and how much do you have to talk to line managers who maybe not mentors themselves, and so on. So have you found that's a challenge to get that sort of buy-in from both sides, particularly from the line managers, who can be quite protective of their team, sort of thing?
I think it's been really well received, actually. We haven't had any problems come up so far. We do ask mentors and mentees when they apply just to get the sign off from their managers, because it is a use of their time. But we haven't had anyone who said no so far, which is fantastic. We try to, particularly with the time constraint, we try to, make it realistic. If you can only manage half an hour a month, that's fine. You're still adding value for that half an hour. So, that's really key in our messaging, is just to make it manageable, make it realistic.
Okay. Cathy, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, no, we did lots of comms around this, Peter, as well. Obviously, internally, Carmen did. She's done a fantastic job on this. And as you say, when a line manager is able to give their blessing to that relationship, then they can also have those conversations with their line report to say, well, maybe this is something you could discuss with your mentee, actually, and then in their regular one-to-ones, they could be discussing, so, is there anything that you're exploring with your mentor that I need to be aware of, that I can support with, so it's a really nice three-way relationship. Supporting the line managers actually as well, because they're also super busy, yeah.
Okay. Look, we've run over time. I know we've run over time, and it's, I find it fascinating, and I hope we've given lots of people lots of food for thought there. But I think we probably should draw the line there. And I'm going to say a huge thank you to both of you, Cathy, particularly. I know you struggled a little bit, but thank you very much for sticking with us. Thank you, Carmen, as well. I know I can speak for both of you and say that anyone watching this online today or watching the video later can reach out. Make contact via LinkedIn is the obvious way of doing it, yeah. And part of the point of these webinars is to try and encourage these connections. So please do, everybody, reach out. But thank you very much. Thank you to the people who've joined us online today. I'm going to call a halt to it. Don't all run away if you're online today, because we can carry on talking for a few minutes. As I always say, if I can help with anybody, then please do get in touch with me. medcommsnetworking.com is the place to go to find out what we're up to.